now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
What's going on, RBLR Nation? This is your Rays podcast, you know, the one we do every week. I'm your host, Zach, and with me we have the co-host. Some of you would say the host because he's the man with the plan, Mr. Ben Whitelaw. How's it going, brother?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, fantastic, man. Dealing with some sick kids this morning, so just trying to get through that.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too fun, so, good luck.
Oh, it's exciting. So today, so we heard a little bit of baseball news this week.
Yeah, more negotiation stuff, but nothing happened. So here's a list of all the things that they agreed to.
Done.
All right, and there it is. So, yep, we're good. A lot of progress on that front.
Exactly. It's getting to be a little bit wild, man. Spring training's not looking so positive now. I'm ready for baseball, man.
Yeah, it's I don't know when we're gonna start, because pitchers and catchers are supposed to report like 5 weeks from now, 6 weeks. So
yeah,
it's gonna be interesting, to say the least.
let's just hope we can get something ironed out soon. Maybe a late start to the season or something. But I need a full season of baseball this season.
Oh yeah, I think we'll get more than the 60-game season, but it's still just by how like both sides are not even close to wanting to agree to anything. I think it's going to take a little bit. So it is what it is. We just got to keep hoping that the owners give in, because the players definitely deserve more than what they're getting right now.
Oh, agreed 100%. And speaking of players, we got some more player reviews to go on today, huh?
All right, perfect segue there. I like it.
All right, so I will start us off and just get the quick little one out of the way, and then we'll go into yours, because yours are always so perfect and detailed. And I love how long we can talk about your player. All right, so I got the one, the only Mr. Maverick Phillips, Brett Phillips, if you guys don't know his nickname. Personally, my favorite player on the Rays. We got him in 2020, early 2020, with we traded for him with Lucius Fox, the prospect, who I'm sure you guys all remember with that cool name. This season, between last season and this season, I think he's kind of made a name for himself, being from the Tampa Bay area. Grew up a Tampa Bay Rays fan, and now he's playing for us. So it's awesome to see that kind of come full circle. And this season he hit 206, not terrible, not great, with 13 home runs and 44 RBIs. But Brett Phillips, even as a younger player, has always been more known for his fielding than his batting. In fact, that's why a lot of people thought that he wasn't going to stick around, because his bat wasn't proven yet.
Right, he kind of reminds me of like Jeff Francoeur. I think that's his name. The guy with the like really strong arm, couldn't hit super well, but he was an incredible fielder, really good defender. And I remember even seeing like Brett Phillips plays when he was with Milwaukee on like the SportsCenter top 10 for just these insane 100-mile-an-hour throws from the outfield. Like, he's got a really strong arm, and he can get after him too in the outfield too. He's a pretty good defender.
Yeah, exactly. And that was, so he was drafted in the 6th round, like you said, by the Astros, but he made his major league debut with the Brewers. And that was one of the few things, like looking up notes on him previously, because I didn't follow Brett Phillips very much until he was a Ray, which I'm sorry for now, but until he became a Ray is when I started doing like actually following him and stuff. And that was one of the big things, that he was throwing triple digits from the outfield. And that's not something you see very often anymore, which is wild. But just for an outfielder who doesn't hit very well, This last season, in a span of 19 days, Phillips hit 3 grand slams and added an inside the park home run just to add on to how not solid of a hitter he is.
Right.
And that actually makes him the first player in American League since, I guess what you call it, the merger, the American League, National League have been a thing. He's the first player to notch 3 grand slams and an inside the park home run within a 30-day span.
That's crazy. I mean, like, nobody really does that. Like, it's hard enough to hit an inside the park home run, but then the grand slams too. Like, he was definitely, you know, running into some pitches for a little bit. He got pretty hot.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if it's more of a, to me, that shows that he can hit for power if he needs to. Like, maybe there's some things we could do to make him hit for power more consistently, but also he's in the 95th percentile on speed in the MLB, so he's very fast, and that's what I see with the inside the park homer, is that he can belt them, but then he can also do what he's supposed to do as far as why he's on the team with that speed.
Yeah, no, he's super valuable, and you know, having 2 left-handed, really good defending outfielders in KK and Phillips is you know, it's probably really hard for the Rays to match up and see who they want in the field versus at the plate, because I mean they're both like fairly similar hitters, I'd say. I think Phillips, you know, got some pretty good results this season from his, you know, inside the park home run. Those are pretty rare. I think his batting average on balls in play might have been high, but I don't really know about that. So I haven't really looked into him much. But yeah, I mean he had a great season though.
Yeah, and I mean, so there's not much to talk about as far as offensively with him, aside from like those random, I don't know if we can say it on air, but awesome stats. Just those cool little random, I guess you could call it records, like the first ALNL player to do that, and he tied some pretty big names with the 3 grand slams in 19 days. But for me, when it comes to Brett Phillips, like I know I've kind of said it, but his fielding is what we want from him. And with that being said, this year he played in 108 games in the outfield, 2 games as a DH, and 1 game he did come in for a pitching thing. I don't know if we'd call it much more.
That's a good way to put it, honestly.
His little warm-ups in the bullpen, man, that was one of the highlights of the whole season for me, was him warming up in the bullpen and then coming out in that first speedometer when he threw, reading, what was it, like 98? Which, it was definitely not a 98-mile-an-hour pitch, but it looked so cool.
Yeah, it was definitely a good morale boost for the team, because, you know, when you throw in a position player, like, you've already lost the game when they're pitching. So, you know, for him to come out there and just give the team, like, not even a win, because, like, he was literally just out there just doing his best. But it was a good morale boost. So it's good to have him on the roster and in the clubhouse for things like that.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And this just kind of is going to lead more into my fielding and his defensive ability, because in those 108 games in the outfield, he had 4 total errors all season. He did have 5 total because he had 1 error as a pitcher, but I'm not counting that one. So just as an outfielder, and that's really only at center field and right field that he had any errors. When he was at left field, granted it was only for 19 games, no errors. He had 8 putouts from left field, and he had 213 putouts all season. From all of the outfield. So it's just, to me, he's going to play a bigger role this season based off just his ability on defense. And I do think that if for some reason Kiermaier were to not be on the team, that Brett Phillips will play a big role into why he's not on the team.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, Phillips does make Kiermaier expendable, but then Josh Lowe kind of makes, like, both of them expendable. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do their roster crunch once this, if and when the lockout ends.
Oh God, that's a good. Oh, I don't want to think about that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, Brett Phillips is, even though he's my favorite player, there's not a whole bunch to go off of because he is kind of a platoon guy, which hurts my heart to say. So I'm gonna let you go into more on your player review this week, and we can talk on it from there and see what else we got, my man.
Yeah, just real quick, where do you see or how do you see Phillips performing in 2022, this next, or whenever we have our next baseball season?
2022, 2023.
Do you think he's, being underutilized with the Rays, or should he stick as a platoon guy? What's your thoughts on that?
So, and that's kind of a tricky question, because do I think he's being underutilized as a Ray? With him being my favorite player, I'm going to say yes, but Tampa Bay has really, really good outfielders. And that's kind of the issue with that, because with them having such good outfielders, I don't think that he's necessarily being underutilized on the Rays team, but I think if he were on any other team, he would be a starting outfielder and probably one of their best outfielders.
Yeah, I mean, defensively, he's, among the top 10 probably in the league, I'd say, in terms of defensive outfielders. Just with the bat, I know that when I looked it up earlier this season, I'll go scroll through it right now. But I remember he was his splits were really extreme. He was basically a double-A hitter when it came to facing lefties, but I'm going to look it up right now.
Yeah,
okay,
you're
so
not far off.
So his career splits here, he's got a 100 weighted runs created plus against righties, which is, that's average, whatever. But he has a 23 weighted runs created plus against lefties. And that's, I don't know if that's a very small sample size here. Okay, so 136 at-bats against lefties and a 23 weighted runs created is probably not something that, a team is going to want to make him their full-time outfield player, I guess. So I think maybe platooning is where he's going to be. I don't know. It depends if he can still, develop, because he's really only 27. He's heading into his prime. So anything could really happen. And I'm just seeing now, okay, this past season, he had 138 weighted run created plus against righties, which is awesome. 38% better than league average, but he had a 13 weighted runs created plus against lefties. So definitely was not a fan of facing Chris Sale at any point. And neither, I wouldn't be either, but 75, okay, 84 plate appearances, that's a pretty good sample size.
Yeah, that's a solid amount.
Yeah, I mean, he was great against righties though, he did phenomenal.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the thing where if it were me and I were the Rays, he would be my everyday outfielder against right-handed pitchers.
I mean, yeah, he's he's a really good platoon player like that, and he's a great 12th man, I guess we could call him, with his energy, being first guy off the bench for a defensive replacement, things like that. His
ability to pinch run. I know he did that a lot this season, and his first season with the Rays. He was our go-to pinch runner, which is, I mean, it's not the greatest job in baseball, but it's a job. So yeah, I think that this year coming up, I could, if his defense stays the same or gets better, I could see him playing a much bigger role, but still the same kind of role, if that makes sense at all. A bigger part of what he's doing now, basically.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And just to touch on the base running thing, the Rays made, a lot of their success this season. I mean, they did everything really well, but a big chunk of that came from their decisions on the base paths. And I'm pulling up the tweet that I saw earlier this week if I can find it. But it was some guy on Twitter, John Anderson, at John PGH, just to give him credit because this is not my work. He sorted the most efficient base running teams in the league based on total bases per run and total bases per RBI. And the Rays were the league leader in both of those categories. So they were, going first to third, second to home, not getting caught stealing, not getting thrown out, better than any other team in the league, because they totaled under 3,000 total bases, which, they were still near the top of the league in that category, but they were, middle, kind of upper third in runs and RBIs this season. Like, they had a pretty solid offense, but they were very efficient with what they did on the base paths, and Phillips was a big part of that, like you said, coming in as a pinch runner. And I know that his Fangraphs ultimate base running metric, so his UBR, which basically measures value on the base paths without factoring things in like stolen bases or caught stealing, like just literally like pure how well is he reading the ball off the bat and getting to the, taking an extra 90 feet. He was at 1.7 runs above average, which was, I believe, second or third on the team. So he was really valuable and just a really solid above average base runner, which, contributed to the Rays' success, because so much of that success, which was hard to measure, is coming from the base paths. And I think that's an interesting area of the game that I think the Rays are going to continue to take advantage of.
Yeah, and just to touch on a little more on that, like you said, that's not factoring in the stolen bases or caught stealing. I mean, he didn't have crazy numbers stealing bases, but he had 14 stolen bases this season and only got caught stealing 3 times. So, I mean, like you said,
it's valuable.
Yeah, valuable, and it seems like he's a very smart base runner and just ball player in general, but specifically on the base paths.
Yeah, no, he was pretty great, and he fits into what the Rays like to do as a team. So I could definitely see him sticking around. But just how drastic those splits are, like if they do decide to, I don't want to say move on from him, but maybe put him into a different kind of role, I wouldn't be too surprised.
Hey, we're talking about everyone else playing first. Maybe he could too.
Honestly, seems like a quick twitch guy. He could probably figure it out.
All right, so that is all for Brett Maverick Phillips. So now I will let you go on with yours, brother.
All right, so I got Manuel Margot, which is like the other side of the Phillips platoon that the Rays had. Nothing really crazy here, but I did find some interesting stuff, which, I try to find like something to build off of that's maybe unique to the player or whatever every time I do these. But Margot has some pretty cool stuff that we'll get into. He was signed in 2011 as an international free agent by the Red Sox, actually, and he actually was traded from Boston to San Diego in a deal that involved Craig Kimbrell. So he was part of a deal, way back in I think 2013 or 2014, and then he was eventually acquired by the Rays before the 2020 season, along with minor league catcher Logan Driscoll for Emilio Pagan. So if any listeners remember Emilio Pagan, he was pretty clutch for the Rays that one season. As many as many relievers are when the Rays just like pick them up on a minor league deal, then they have a great season, turn them into something valuable. He's due to make $5 million this season, which is interesting because I didn't think he was going to make that much, but that's like his projected salary based on, it might have been finalized, but it's based on like arbitration and stuff. So not 100% sure on that, but it should be close to $5 million. And he's going to be a free agent after this season, and he will turn 28 in like September, I think. So he's heading into his prime as well. And he might be going into this, I was thinking he's possibly like a trade candidate for the Rays, but I kind of like where he's going, so I don't know, maybe they're going to try to keep him, and he does a lot of things really well, so I think the Rays might try to mold him into something that they see in their future plans, whether it's as a corner outfielder, center fielder, platoon guy. I don't know, they'll figure it out, but he's a pretty good guy to have on your roster. So with the offense here, he put up a pretty respectable 2.8 baseball reference wins above replacement. So, not an all-star level, but, he's pretty solid, much better than just like your average, platoon guy. He had a 95 weighted runs created plus overall with an 8% walk rate and 15% strikeout rate to go along with a 696 OPS. So he's basically like pretty below average, slightly below average offensively, with decent bat to ball skills. He'll take his walks, doesn't strike out too much, puts the ball in play. But, the Rays like to platoon, so like you could probably guess, he was pretty good against lefties with a 112 weighted runs created plus and a 753 OPS. And he actually wasn't terrible against righties. He had an 81 weighted runs created plus and a 650 OPS, so he kind of held his own. That's probably because, he'll put the ball in play and, and that helps his speed play up because he can get on base by laying down a bunt, hitting a grounder the opposite way. And I talked about the ultimate base running metric earlier with Phillips. Well, Margot had, slightly lower. He was at 1.4 runs above average. And looking at the league leaders, Tim Anderson was the league leader at 5.2. But I want you to try to guess who the best on the Rays was. It's kind of surprising.
The best on the...
The best base runner based on UBR on the Rays, yeah.
Since you said it's surprising, I'm going to go with Mike Zanino.
No, it's not that surprising. He was not very good. Meadows was the worst at -3, which is kind of interesting because he's not a slow guy. I guess he's just not a great base runner, not very instinctive on the paths. But it was actually Brandon Lau. He was at 2.6. So that was 2.6 runs above average. So he was the best base runner on the team, good enough for 22nd in the league. So pretty interesting. But it makes sense because I feel like, watching games or listening to him on the radio, like Brandon Lau will be at first base and there'll be like, a ball that's flared off the bat into the outfield and he'll somehow get to third and then like either Dwayne or BA or one of the radio guys will be like, yeah, that was a pretty good read by Lau. Well, he does that a lot and he'll go first to third, about as well as anybody on the team and probably better than, a lot of guys. So he's not the fastest, but he's a great base runner. So that's just another cool thing that Lau brings to the table. But anyways, I'll go back to Margot. He was in the 87th percentile in strikeout rate and sprint speed. So like I said, good bat to ball skills, good speed. And he was in the 77th percentile in whiff rate. So he didn't really swing and miss too much. He was pretty good. But that didn't really translate into great offensive numbers despite, his good discipline and good bat to ball skills because he was only in the 36th percentile in weighted expected on base average. So doesn't really make quality contact when he does make contact. He's more just kind of like hitting ground balls, weaker fly balls. But he did have a career high in barrel rate and hard hit percentage this season, which is interesting because he really had a slightly below average season offensively, but he's starting to figure things out at the plate. And, heading into his prime, it might get a little bit interesting this next season. So I'll talk about that stuff when I get into his outlook for 2022. But his defense, real quick, was phenomenal as expected. He had 13 defensive runs saved, which was the second most, or tied for the first most on the team with Kiermaier. And he was in the 99th percentile in outs above average with 16 outs above average. And that was he literally had the best defensive output among all Rays players this season. So, good on him. He did get a little bit more playing time with Kiermaier. I don't think he played a whole lot at the beginning of the season. Kiermaier didn't. So Margot was out there a bit more. And I know Phillips was injured, I believe, to start the season. So he really just had the best output because he played the most. But I think he's still one of the best defensive outfielders in baseball, even if he didn't get that playing time advantage. So that's it defensively. Any questions before I go on to his 2022 outlook?
No, I will save my questions for the 2022 outlook because that's kind of more where my questions are at.
Okay.
The questions I was going to ask.
So I, trying to find something interesting, something to build on for Margot when he's like a pretty average hitter and a great fielder. But I did find that his weighted runs created plus has been slightly improving each year since 2018. And his the 15 game rolling average on that has been looking really solid since the Rays acquired him. So it seems like they have some kind of plan that he's working on. Fangraphs actually projects him to have a career high 107 weighted runs created plus next season, which is interesting because he's never broken like 95 in a season for his career. So to project him to be whatever like 12% better next season when the projections are usually pretty conservative is really interesting. So I think Margot is going to be as close to a full-time capable player as the Rays have had in a little while, because he can hold his own against righties, and he does hit lefties pretty well. And it kind of shows, with his splits. But he also had a 94 weighted runs created plus in the first half of the season, and then a 97 in the second half. So that trend is, showing not just season to season, but like month to month. And he's making better contact in the zone. I talked about that a little bit. He underperformed his expected slugging percentage, expected batting average, weighted expected on base average. All three of those by roughly 15 points in 2021. So he's really 15 points each. So he's really poised to have a solid breakout this next season. And he's going to continue to be a top 5 defensive outfielder, which is interesting because he's usually the second or third best outfielder on his team, but he's still the 5th best in baseball. So that just goes to show how great, Kiermaier and the other options are. But I'm honestly pretty excited for him. I'd like to see them keep him around, beyond 2022, just because of how things are trending for him. But the Rays are gonna, sell him at a peak, when they can get the most value for him, or they might just let him walk. I don't really know. It's tough to stay with him, so it'll be interesting to see what they decide.
All right, so that was one of my questions, because I believe that he played most of his time at right field.
Yes.
So
I think so.
Do we picture it being a lineup of him, or an outfield lineup of him, Kiermaier, and Arozarena?
I mean, depending on if they're facing a lefty starter, I think Kiermaier still gets the nod in center field, just because that defense, like we've seen, is so valuable. Even when he's not making these amazing, low catch probability catches, he's still making all the moderately difficult plays look easy. So I think he's going to be the starting center fielder until somebody takes that job from him. It's his to lose, really. So I think KK starts center field no matter who they're facing, and then if they're, against a lefty starter, definitely Randy and Margot on the sides of him. And I think Randy's probably going to start even against righties, because he's such an electric player. He can do a lot really well. His splits aren't too drastic, kind of like Margot. So I think we'll see, Randy playing even against righties, and then against another righty starting. So the right fielder basically would be probably switching between Margot and maybe Meadows. I don't know if they move Meadows to first. I just see Phillips as more of a bench guy, because he's due to regress. You look at his splits. I know Brett Rutherford talked about it last time a little bit.
Yeah.
He, hitting 4 grand slams in 30 days, whatever it was.
3 grand slams and an inside the park home run. That's
right. That's what it was. That's not sustainable, especially for any player. And then Brett Phillips too, given his track record. That's not to say he's not valuable for the team, but it's just his career numbers up to this point haven't really shown that he's going to do that consistently. And also the Orioles did move their wall back 30 feet, so there goes a couple home runs for anybody looking to hit the ball that way.
News too.
Yeah, it was an interesting decision, because I know a lot of fantasy baseball people who are they will not draft Orioles pitchers at all because they just give up so many home runs at that park. But now they're maybe draftable if they're a right-handed pitcher, because the left field wall is going back. So who knows? It's gonna definitely mess up some people's fantasy decisions though.
With Brett Phillips being the bench guy, and I don't disagree with you on saying that the 3 grand slams in 19 days and then the inside the park within 30 days of that, there's a reason that he's the first person to ever do it in the American League, National League time. So I agree with you saying it's not sustainable. But who would you rather have at center field? Brett Phillips, or this is hypothetically with Kiermaier not there. Brett Phillips or Margot?
I know Phillips has the stronger arm by a mile, but I mean I would I think the Rays would platoon them, but if I had to start one, like playoff game, we don't know who the pitcher is, something like that, I think I would still go with Margot just based on what he's going to give you at the plate. Like, you're going to get a decent at bat no matter who you're facing, a lefty or a righty, where with Phillips, like, no disrespect to him, but he had a 38% strikeout rate this season, and that's he's good to strike out at least once a game. If he's facing a righty, or a lefty, sorry, he's probably going to be twice a game. It's closer to 50%. So also with Phillips' expected slugging percentage, it was a 359, but he somehow managed a 427. So like that's like, screaming overperformance. The projections don't love him, but I want him on the roster in some capacity because of what he brings. Like he's like what Jimon Choi was in like 2019 to the team. Like he's just so, you got to have him. And until like a younger guy like Franco, Brujan, Walls, even Josh Lowe, like until one of those guys kind of steps up as like a clubhouse presence, like I think you got to keep Phillips around, even if you're not starting him and you're paying him, whatever, $2 million to sit on the bench. Like it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, like literally, baseball is fun. That's like he embodies that, like the little kid who grew up to play his favorite sport and is on his favorite team. Like he's just having a blast, even if he's not playing a huge role, which makes the times that he does play a huge role or does something impressive or major just that much better. Like you almost have to root for him.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not to say that Margot's like this amazing, like better player than Phillips. It's just like Phillips has like the arm. Margot's got like the better route running, and he's a little bit more secure with the glove. But then KK is honestly like he's still pretty far ahead of both of those guys.
Oh yeah,
and they're two of the best defensive outfielders. Like it's crazy to see how good he actually is. Like every time I look at his Savant page, like his like 3-star, 4-star, 5-star catches, like he just does it so much better and so much more consistently than any other outfielder. So there's my plug for KK for this episode, but I'll get off that soapbox for now. But yeah, it's really cool that the Rays have like 3 of the top 5 defensive outfielders on their roster, and they can just use them however they want. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing as a Rays fan, which is amazing to see, is that there will never be a time, at least there hasn't been since I've been able to follow baseball, where the Rays weren't just loaded with defensive talent.
Yeah,
Our
no,
problem
definitely.
has
it's
always
cool.
been offense, and now that that's coming along, it's just like you said, it's crazy that we have 3 of the potential top 5 defensive outfielders on our team.
Yeah, and none of them won Gold Gloves this season, which is interesting. So
yeah,
I mean the Gold Gloves are like it's a popularity contest. Like you nominate DJ LeMahieu for a Silver Slugger, like that just throws all credibility like out the window. Honestly, like exactly. I know it's a cool fun award thing. It's people like to talk about it, but they don't let the people that are. I mean, I'm not saying like the baseball writers who vote don't understand what they're doing, but like some of them don't. Like they really don't. They're like, oh, this guy had no errors, but like, okay, so he played super conservatively and like his team never shifted him and never put him in a position where, he might be vulnerable for a second.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like, not to talk football on a baseball podcast, but this is my issue with the writers being able to vote for like MVP and like in baseball, it's, the Silver Sluggers. But like there was, and I would like to point out, I do not like Aaron Rodgers. So if anyone's listening and they think I like Aaron Rodgers, I want to take that back. But he just got into a fight with a reporter because he said that he wouldn't. The reporter told him like, you're basically said you're a jerk. You're not going to get my vote for MVP. And he was one of the voters on the MVP panel. Like, I think it should be Brady, obviously, but like. Just the ability of a writer to be like, you know what, I'm a Yankees fan. I'm gonna vote for DJ LeMahieu. Like that's wild to me.
Yeah, it's just not. I mean, I don't know what the answer is for like I don't know what that solution would be. It's definitely not fan voting because that would get even messier.
Oh my God!
But then but you also don't want like the guys who run like the front offices of baseball making the decisions, because then they would like they wouldn't tailor it to actual performance, because there's so much about like expected values and expected performance and all that. So I feel like it would be, not a good solution there. But I just feel like the baseball writers have a little bit too much power in that. So yeah, it's interesting, and there's no right answer there. But DJ LeMahieu getting a nomination, Austin Meadows getting a 10th place MVP vote. Like, come on, like that's Salvador Perez getting like a 2nd place MVP vote over Vlad Guerrero. Like, come on, it's.
Something's got to be done,
crazy.
but like you said, I don't know a solution to it. You don't know a solution to it, and if we can't figure out a solution, I don't think anybody can.
No, I mean this is it right here. This is the think tank RBLR raise. So it's if we can't do it, nobody can.
Oh my goodness! All right, so do we cover everything or?
I think we're good. But speaking of covering things, shirts cover people's bodies, and we sell shirts at our shop at shot.rblrsports.com. So if you're interested in like covering yourself with a shirt, we all wear shirts. People wear shirts. You can go to shop.rblrsports.com. Use our promo code FLAPPY. That's FLAPPY for 10% off your order. We've got all your favorite teams, all of our, the Bucks, the Rays, Lightning, Rowdies. I'm going to be on the Rowdies podcast on the 24th, by the way. I'm going to talk about some soccer stuff because soccer is my other love. But the link's going to be in the description. We got our great designs, and that's our shop. That's our plug there.
That was such a good segue, bro.
I was gonna say it earlier when you said something about ironing something out, like near the intro. I was gonna be like, "Oh, speaking of ironing, have you ever ironed a shirt?" But I was like, "No, let's just get into this. We don't need an ad read in the first 30 seconds." So,
but yeah, guys, we appreciate you as always. If you guys enjoy the show, if it's your first time listening, thank you for tuning in. Not an ad read, but we would also love for you guys to go ahead and subscribe to all of our social medias. We got Facebook, we got Instagram, we've got Twitter. If you guys just give us a follow on that, we're on all your favorite podcast listening platforms. So just
give us a 5-star review on Spotify. It's super easy. You don't even have to like type anything. You just like tap it. So I've done that for all the podcasts I listen to, except for one of them. I gave them 4 stars. Just because I thought it would be funny, but I'll probably give them 5 stars. But give us 5 stars. It would be pretty cool if you did that. So, that's about it. I think we're good then.
Just give us a like, give us a follow. It would help us out a lot, and it would show us that, y'all enjoy it as much as we do. So, we love you guys. Go Rays.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.